So within Tier 2, again, that is a space where we're developing a plan for slightly higher, elevated level of need for supports. There are all sorts of different things that can be done. A couple that I'll highlight here that I've heard about happening in New Hampshire schools are resource rooms. So safe places within a school for students who are experiencing challenges to go, either to calm down, to connect with that one adult in the building that they feel like they have a good relationship with, to help develop those protective factors. Another is called check-in, check-out, and it essentially does the same thing. So for students who need to have that good, strong, positive relationship with an adult in the building, who need that level of support and feel sort of comfortable and empowered to fully engage and be ready to learn through a relationship with an adult, check-in, check-out creates a structured process for them to do that. So set times throughout the day with set individuals that they literally go and say, hi, here I am, here's how my day is going, I need help with this, I'm excited about this, I'm empowered by this. It's a consistent support for a student throughout the course of the day, from the moment they get there in the morning until the moment they leave in the afternoon. It's important to know that anything that happens within the system is all driven by those guiding principles of being family-driven and youth-guided. Families are a part of every phase of this process. If a student is receiving check-in, check-out, if they are participating in that service, the family would know if the student is going to the resource room for supports throughout the course of the day. They would be part of that process because that is the guiding principle on which we build everything. The goal of all of this is 100% transparency and good, strong collaborative partnerships and relationships with all of the stakeholders in our community for the sole purpose of having better outcomes for students. Do we get it right 100% of the time? When I say we, I don't really mean the Department of Ed because we don't do this. Do New Hampshire schools get it right 100% of the time? No. But our hope is, through all of that professional development we're providing, through all of the technical assistance and support, through the increased community planning processes, we're moving towards a place where we get it right 100% of the time. That's the goal. So at Tier 3, the most intense services level, there are all sorts of things that can happen, but within our grants, a considerable amount of time has been spent developing a relationship between New Hampshire's education system and New Hampshire's community mental health system. What you see there is the list of community mental health centers that serve New Hampshire and their pinpoints for where they exist. When we started this work in 2014, we really needed to start with getting to know you. The education and mental health systems did not speak to one another. They actually had completely separate languages. They didn't understand what the other was doing, and they were often not working in opposition, but because they weren't working collaboratively together, it was creating confusion and misunderstanding for the families in their communities. One of the things that has sort of come out of our work with districts since 2014 is a facilitated referral process. The background for that is that the education system learned what community mental health is, who works there, what services they provide. The facilitated referral process then empowers the education system to use that information to give it to families so that families can better understand the mental health system and what services and supports are available to them in their communities. Educators and families work together, they learn about the system, and then family may say, that sounds like something that would benefit my child. Can you make a connection for me? Part of why that's important is because, as you see here, there are not very many community mental health centers. And so they are not in a position to go out and proactively educate their communities or proactively make themselves available in their communities. So we're able to give families that information about that system through that facilitated referral process. No services are provided without the family being involved. the school in a facilitated referral process if the school doesn't provide the services. The community mental health center does once the families agree that that's something that they want to engage in. So as you can tell, a considerable amount of work goes into addressing student wellness. And as I've said a couple times, it's really important that we know the work and time and resources that we're putting into this is resulting in positive outcomes for students. We do that through evaluation. So you sort of see here the three reasons, or the three jumping off points for why we're doing evaluation. We want to learn and improve. We want to find out if what we're doing is working, and if it's not, we want to create a plan to do something different. We want to inform decision-making and policy development about what can we do to better support the system overall, over time, for all of the Hampshire. And we also need to, like the commissioner said, be accountable to our funders. The vast majority of this work is being paid for using federal dollars, and the federal government says we need to understand the output of your work to ensure that we're getting a good return on our investment. So let's dive in a little bit and talk about what we collect and how we measure it. What you see here are some data points that are collected. These are collected only for the districts that we sub-grant to through the federal funding. Because MTSSD is a system and a process, you'll see that these are system and process data indicators. There's no student personally identifiable information or PII here. These are some others that are being collected, again, in the districts that are getting the federal funding. I want to highlight here one that's struck through. This is a school climate survey that we originally had conducted by issuing a non-identifiable survey to students about what their experience in the school is. Do they feel safe? Do they have a relationship with at least one adult in the school system? Questions of the like. As you know, the legislature passed a law that's known as the non-academic survey law. You may know that. And essentially what it says is that in order to conduct a non-academic survey, you have to get prior parental opt-in, written opt-in, for the student to answer the questions. We have found that a couple things. Schools don't have systems set up to really process or manage the opt-ins. And kids aren't really good at bringing paper back and forth from home and school. So we weren't getting good results, meaning we weren't getting enough of a response to the surveys to make them worth our while. So this is something that we've cut out. This is not the information that comes to the state. Does not include PII, it does not include personally identifiable information. All of the information that you see here that is collected by the LEA manager comes to us in aggregate. Now there is an exception to that, which is here. These are data points on a specific service that is supported through our System of Care grant. That service is called High Fidelity Wraparound. It is a service that was originally provided through the Department of Health and Human Services. And its most recent iteration, because there was a challenge in connecting with families for that service, its most recent iteration, we ran a pilot here, or are running a pilot here with a few districts in terms of delivering this specific service. This is a service to a family unit. It's essentially a case management service that helps the family coordinate and organize the services that they need. They could be mental health services, they could be other services. There's around 40 families in New Hampshire participating in this, and prior to their participation, this entire project, the service, all of the data that's collected, everything that happens through it is rolled out to them through very methodical consent forms and supporting conversations. Because that's very robust, I did not make copies for everyone, but there is a binder over here that I'm happy to walk anyone through in terms of what the consent forms are and what that looks like.
Can we go back to the other two slides and talk about each one of those elements for those of us who are not familiar with that, please?
We are looking to evaluate collaboration. The engagement on things like that, those community management teams, and the engagement of the stakeholders. The tool or measure for that is how many MOUs or MOAs, so memorandum of understanding or memorandum of agreement we have with community partners, and that is one measure of participation and collaboration. Policies. How many policy changes have happened as a result of that MTSSB planning process? Here we have a couple workforce development indicators. So the number of mental health workforce trained through trainings that are a result of that process, and the number of consumers providing mental health related services. So what that means is individuals with lived experience can often engage in all of this work. A lot of what we do is with an organization called NAMI New Hampshire. We have a representative from NAMI here too in the event that you have questions about them and their role. But that's essentially what that is. Youth mental health first aiders and instructors trained. Youth mental health first aid is in this trifold brochure. It's an evidence-based training to increase mental health awareness. So that's how many people we've trained and how many instructors are trained. This is also something that might be sparking a memory for you from the governor's school safety task force recommendations. This training was a recommendation in there. We just pulled the numbers the other day, and I believe
we've trained over 1,500 folks.
Since May.
In this school year.
Yep. And then linkages, the number of times that the people who have been trained use it to make their community better. Community supports for wraparound inventory, so the number of supports that are available to address those students with the highest level of need. Again, this is done, it says here collected from care management entity. That's our community management team that I talked about earlier. So that diverse group of stakeholders is having a conversation about what supports this. Early childhood. Data streams are enrollment and screening. Enrollment counts in early childhood programs. That could be school-based, that could be private providers. It depends on how the community defines it. And then the number of ASQSEs. ASQSE is an acronym. It stands for Ages and Stages Questionnaire, Social Emotional. It is a parent-completed questionnaire. I think it's 10 questions about their observations of their child. It is the start of a conversation with the school district or the early childhood provider about what the district or provider can do to partner with the family to address the concerns